afternoon, everyone. Today I'm joined by the Emergency Services Minister, Steph, Cooke, James Auslan from the Bureau, the SES Commissioner, Carlene, Brigadier from the Australian Defence Force, and our CMCOM Deputy Commissioner, Perrottet. Well, it continues to be a very difficult time for the people of New South Wales, right across our state, facing incredibly challenging flood conditions. We currently have over 120 warnings in place, and of those 120 warnings, we have 20 evacuation orders. The main areas that are under threat and being affected are in the Northern Rivers. Obviously, for that community in the Northern Rivers, it's been a very challenging time, and there are concerns in relation to current flooding, but also potentially further rainfall heading our way in the Northern Rivers, particularly around Lismore, Mooloolaba, and the Tweed. Moree and Gunnedah continues to remain challenging with the rivers rising in that area. We've currently established a base camp in Moree with 150 emergency services personnel and ADF, and also emergency services support from Western Australia. Can I thank them for the support that they are providing. Moama, the river continues to rise with more rainfall on the way in that community. I want to particularly thank the Commonwealth Government and the support that we've had from the Australian Defence Force. So the Brigadier is here today. We have 200 personnel on the ground and 50 on standby in Singleton. So this is a team effort from both a state and federal government. And I also want to thank the local councils and the mayors in those flood-affected communities working day in and night to make sure our communities, their communities, remain safe during this period of time. I want to thank our volunteers. Whether it's been through bushfires, droughts and floods and more floods, our volunteers right across the state and right across the country have come together to help every one of our communities get through this difficult time, and they are at it again. We currently have over 550 SES volunteers in the field right across our state looking after our communities, and that's on top of our RFS support, police, maritime rescue, right across the water, surf lifesavers. It is our men and women right across our state who continue to ensure the protection of communities in those flood-affected communities. So I can particularly thank them. And I also want to thank our employers, our businesses who are providing leave for those people who are volunteers to go and protect our communities. And I'd ask you this week as well, as we enter even more difficult conditions, that you continue to work with your employees, with your volunteers, to provide them that support so they can do what they love and what we thank them for day in, day out, and that's protecting lives and protecting property. So I just want to make that point today. To our people in those communities, can I make this point? Please follow those instructions. If there is an evacuation order in place, please do not wait for a knock at the door from the SES. Please follow those instructions. Those instructions are not there for the sake of it. Those instructions are there to keep you and your family safe. There are expected to be more orders that come into place over the coming days, but please follow the updates from the State Emergency Services. As I said, following those orders keeps you safe, and particularly as well, it keeps safe our volunteers. And please don't drive through floodwaters. And it's really important this message comes across. We say it every press conference, but we still have people who continue to drive through floodwaters. Just yesterday, we had someone drive through floodwaters, needed to be rescued by 20 emergency service volunteers. That's taking resources away from our emergency services, and importantly as well, you're risking their lives. Please don't drive through floodwaters. Please follow those instructions, and we'll get through this together as we have in the past. I want to thank everybody for the sustained effort that people are making. We have the best volunteers anywhere in the world, and every time we have these difficult times, the great Australian spirit comes to the fore. That's what makes Australia great, that spirit of service, that sense of volunteerism. And to see it on display, to see in Moree, people coming together, uniform volunteers and non-uniform volunteers, people from the community coming to help others, people filling sandbags. That is the great Australian way. That's what we see through every natural disaster. And it's an honour to be Premier of the State to see people coming out, putting their lives on the line, making that effort day in, day out to keep our communities safe. To everybody across the state, particularly in the northern, western, southern areas of New South Wales, we will get through this. We've got through flood event after flood event over this period of time, and we will get through this one as well. The best way for us to get through this together is to follow those instructions. The SES, when they come to your door, please evacuate if those orders are in place. If the warnings are in place, please get ready to evacuate. As I said, they're not there for the sake of it. They're there to keep you and your family safe, and the best thing that we can do as a community is follow those instructions, and if we do that, we'll get through this flood event like we've got through every one of the past. I'm now going to pass to Steph Cooke, who'll provide some further details in relation to the flood across New South Wales. Then we'll hear from Jane from the Bureau, and then Commissioner York from the SES.
Well, thank you. As I said yesterday, we're facing a very dangerous 48 hours right across New South Wales. What we are currently experiencing is more flood threats in more communities and locations than at any other time this year. At present, we literally have a flood risk in every corner of the state. I really want to emphasise today that the flooding situation in every community is unique. And so we're calling on communities far and wide to continue to listen to the advice put out by the SES, pay attention and keep up to date with the advice and the warnings put out by the Bureau of Meteorology. They are done so to keep you safe through what we know is a challenging time. I know that our communities are tired, that you are sick of seeing grey skies and the rain falling. We will get through this challenging time, particularly if we heed the warnings of the SES and pay attention to the advice put out by the Bureau. Every flood, of course, is different, and I'm also asking communities not to rely on your past experience in relation to flooding events when making decisions about the current circumstances that we are facing. So if you are asked to evacuate, please do so, because we're asking you to do so to keep you safe and to keep your family safe. As the Premier has mentioned, we are at present establishing a base camp at Moree. We already have one in place, of course, down at Deniliquin, and we are now setting up one in Moree, where we will see 150 personnel based there, and that will take pressure off local accommodation so that our emergency services have a base from which they can work, including the ADF and, of course, our partners from right across Australia, including Western Australia at this time. We know that in the Northern Rivers we are likely to experience major flooding again through that community, and spoken numerous times in recent hours with the Mayor of Lismore, and that community, of course, is anxious, understandably, and we will get through this, and to that extent we have put more resources and more preparations in place there than we've seen in recent times. So we have helicopters pre-positioned, we have 100 ADF moving into that community. We have swift water teams, rescue teams pre-positioned up there and ready to go. We've got unimogs and plenty of SES personnel on the ground there. So we've already started some door knocking. The communications campaign with local community has ramped up substantially, and we also have personnel from Surf Lifesaving Police and Marine Rescue all working together to make sure that that community remains safe at this time. So whilst we're really in the emergency phase still right across New South Wales with 122 warnings in place at present, we do have one eye and therefore preparations in place for the immediate cleanup and recovery efforts as those floodwaters recede in various communities across New South Wales. We'll have more to say on that as the days unfold. So our emergency services volunteers continue to do a wonderful job, and I would like to echo the words of the Premier today in thanking them for their efforts day in, day out. Many of our SES volunteers have been working every single day for up to 12 months now, and I really want to say thank you to them and all of their efforts. They are tired, and the best thing that we can do is to continue working with them. And to that end, we cannot have a flood boat on the corner of every street in every town, and so to that extent, please do not drive through floodwaters. We've seen 34 flood rescues over the past 24 hours, and that's 34 too many. So if people could please not drive-through floodwaters. If it's flooded, forget it. There's a reason we say that. It does divert resources and it puts our people at risk. And on that note, I'll now hand over to Jane Golding of the Bureau. Thank you.
So I'll provide a weather and flood update for New South Wales, and I'll focus firstly on inland New South Wales and then cross over towards the coast. So we currently have numerous flood warnings out across the state, and the majority at the moment of them are for inland New South Wales, and half of the ones that are out over there are for major flood warnings. So major, when we're talking about major, we're talking about widespread inundation of rural and urban areas, significant disruption to transport routes and utilities, water into properties, isolations and evacuations. So a significant proportion of New South Wales affected by major flood warnings at the moment from rain that's already fallen. So I'll just read out a few of the locations of note. But I won't read out all of them, and I'd urge those after that information to refer to the Bureau's website. All the flood warnings are on the Bureau's website and also via the app. You can enable push notifications on the Bureau's app, which makes it very easy to stay up to date on information as these forecasts and warnings get updated. So Moree that's on the Meehi River, which is a breakout of the Guada, so up towards the Queensland border, experiencing major flooding at the moment, has been since yesterday, and the peak has yet to arrive. We're expecting a peak of 10.7 metres there this afternoon, which is higher than what they saw in March 21. Obviously significant impacts for that community. The good news is as the water in the upstream of the catchment has been monitored by our hydrologists, they've revised the forecast down just a little bit and a little bit further downwards from what we thought yesterday, which was pretty close to the record. The 10.7 metres, so higher than the March 21 event, a little bit lower than the February 12 event. Gunnedah as well, up on the northwest slopes and plains, that's on the Namoi River, experiencing major flooding and expected to peak this evening at 8.6 metres based on the rain that's already fallen. So that's similar to what they saw in November 21, which was also a very significant event for that location. Also experiencing major at Weewar this afternoon and monitoring really closely what will happen at Narrabri, which is downstream of Weewar in Gunnedah, for how that water moves as it moves down from Gunnedah in particular, but possibly might get up to major flood classification, so significant levels on Tuesday for Narrabri. Conjoglin and Hay also expecting to increase to major flood levels on Monday. Cooke on the Murray, a little while ago I looked at that was up at 94.83 metres AHD, expecting that to reach 95 overnight, 95 metres overnight, and stay quite high for quite a few days. So that's similar to levels that they saw in October 93. That water will move down through the Murray River system towards Swan Hill and then further onwards, and we're looking at increases at Swan Hill at this stage. It looks like the first week in November. All of those forecasts are based on rain that's already fallen, and unfortunately we are looking to see more rain fall over inland areas over the next couple of days, and then again later in the week. We are seeing a system coming from South Australia today, already seeing moderate totals along the South Australian border, and that rain and those storms will generally extend eastwards across to the slopes today and a bit further eastwards tomorrow. So that means more river rises are likely over inland areas, and really not looking at any respite, unfortunately, anytime soon. Crossing over towards the coast now, which is a new risk that's evolving just over the last few days and expected to further evolve over the early part of this week. We've seen a low pressure system develop off the Sunshine Coast of Queensland, and overnight, so in the 24 hours up until 9 a.m. yesterday, that system produced pretty widespread totals of up to, close to 100 millimetres widespread over a broad area from the New South Wales border up to close to Bundaberg. And there was a pocket in there of even higher totals, with some locations seeing upwards of 200 millimetres. So this system is producing a lot of rain, and this is a system that we're concerned about for the northern rivers over the next 24 hours. The system is forecast to be just sitting off the Gold Coast later tonight. And what that means for the New South Wales side of the border, and they've already picked up about 80 mils in the last 24 hours, is they'll continue to see more rain, and some very intense falls are possible, really from the Queensland border downwards to around about Nambucca over the next 24 to 30 hours, 24 to 36 hours. So that'll mean a response in the rivers, and the key rivers of concern at the moment are the Tweed, the Wilsons and the Richmond. With the forecast rainfall, they could expect to see their rivers start to rise tomorrow, but tomorrow really will be the day to keep an eye on. So we have issued a major flood warning already for the Wilsons River, so that's a river that includes Lismore, for reaching 9.7 metres tomorrow afternoon. We'll have to see how much rain this system produces. Could be less, the river height could be lower, could be higher. We really need to see how much rain falls and where it falls. But certainly our computer model guidance and what we've seen in Queensland causes us concern. The Orara and the Clarence, as well as the Nambucca and the Bellinger and the Nambucca, are also mentioned on our flood watch for up to moderate flooding, so not as high for those rivers, but be asking residents of those communities just to keep an eye on this system as it evolves. It's forecast to move pretty slowly today and then start to speed up as it tracks parallel to the New South Wales coast over the next couple of days. I'll just try and summarise the state's weather really quickly. It's quite a complicated weather situation at the moment, but we are expecting increase in rainfall both over the inland areas and the coast over the next day. And we are seeing already rivers at major flood warning levels, particularly in inland, and watching closely to see what that rain does. The northern rivers on the coast is the key area to be watching closely today and tonight. And then as this system moves further southwards, the mid-north coast and possibly the Hunter might come into play. And I'll hand over to Commissioner York from the New South Wales SES to talk to you some more about some impacts on the ground.
Facing in New South Wales is a very significant weather event in the western area, central west, Riverina, and particularly the northern rivers. At the moment, the SES is out across all those areas at risk, being assisted by our emergency service partners and other volunteer agencies, police and interstate resources, and of course the ADF. We're working on a number of fronts. First of all, we're preparing communities for what is coming with this new forecast of the weather event, additional forecast of this weather event and what is going to happen over the next 24 to 48 hours. We're doing a lot of community engagement, a lot of media and a lot of messaging going out to the community so that you know and are aware of your risk and that you know what to do as a result of our messages. Today's press conference is an example of telling you that there are some serious major flooding that is going to affect a number of areas across this state. So please be aware, ring family and friends, make sure that they're okay, make sure that they're keeping up to date with our messaging. We're very much assisted by the ADF in that preparation in relation to sandbagging and door knocking, but we cannot knock on everyone's doors. We put out messages to the community to make sure that you know what your risk is, and we try to get around to as many of those communities at risk and let you know personally what you are facing. But if you have been in these areas and have suffered from floods before, you know what your risk is. So be prepared, have an emergency kit, understand what you can do with your animals and do it early, because we are called out to assist people with their livestock and animals as well, and we really want to make sure that our resources are maintained to assist people who may be in danger. So listen to those messages, be prepared. If we do a warning out to you for evacuate now, it doesn't mean look out the window and say, I'm not really at risk, I think I'll take a chance, I'll stay here and see what happens in the next few hours. It means because we know that your property is at risk and we want you to evacuate. We want you to keep safe and we want to make sure our emergency personnel are put in danger to go in and risk their lives by saving you, and it ties up a lot of resources as we've heard today. So evacuate, it's better to be inconvenienced for 48 hours, go back to your homes when we say it's safe to return, and make sure that you and your family are safe. The other area that we're doing is obviously the response, but also as soon as the rivers start to reduce in various areas, we will be going in and doing rapid damage assessments and declaring when it is safe to return and getting ready to hand over to recovery. So it's really important you listen to those messages and know where you are in relation to those messages and what you have to do. So our volunteers are working around the clock to make sure that they can help you. What we're facing is not only these rains, but we've come out of about 18 months of solid rain where the dams are full, the ground is saturated, and the rivers are already at a very high level, and it just is topping up those rivers. And there's nowhere for the water to go but into the river system and into those properties that are at risk in those flood risk areas. There's also the risk of a flash flooding, which obviously occurs very quickly and can put you in danger. So again, and it's been said today, if you see water across the road, don't drive through floodwaters. We have had those rescues overnight where we've been really busy, and they continue each day in rescuing people that have made a poor decision to either go around a road closed sign or to drive into floodwaters and put themselves and the other occupants in their car at risk, and therefore putting my volunteers and our other support services at risk as well. So if you don't have to travel in these areas and you have time to stock up and stay at home, then I would encourage you to do that so that you are not put at risk. And the SES are there to help you if you do need our assistance in any way. So to ring, it's 132 500 for the assistance of SES, but if it is life-threatening, ring 000. Thank you.
Questions?
You mentioned that they would eventually move to a recovery phase. Laurie, for example, has already lost possibly millions of dollars worth of crop. What sort of reassurance can you offer to
Financial support. Well, obviously we have a rural assistance fund in place to help those communities. In fact, the Minister and I saw this firsthand in Forbes just last week when we were there with the Prime Minister. And we've had our agricultural communities hit very hard, not just on the back of drought, but now flooding. We have those disaster relief payments in place. I wrote to the Commonwealth just yesterday, actually, in relation to further financial support, and we have a very constructive relationship in working through it. In fact, I think we've learned anything from the previous floods. The structures that we have in place for financial assistance as we move to recovery is in a much better place than it has been in the past, and also the support for the ADF support that we've had. To have 200 ADF personnel already on the ground, to have 50 on standby, I really do believe that the collaboration between the state and federal government, particularly at the time when Victoria is also going through a difficult time with floods, is incredibly positive. But we don't want anybody to fall behind. We've already put over $3 billion in financial support as a result of the recent floods that we've had. And I met with councils just last week about ways in which, as we do move through recovery, the New South Wales government needs to partner with councils on improving infrastructure, not just building it back the same way it was, and being in the same situation again, and having that infrastructure need to be replaced.
Off the back of $3 billion, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering how the budget is going to fare with the extraordinary amount of weather events that we've had, the responses needed off the back of 2 years of COVID payments.
Well, it's divvy, Robert. It's divvy. I mean, we've gone through drought, where we put around $4.5 billion in support, $4 billion in support for our bushfire affected communities, tens of billions of dollars of support to help everybody get through the pandemic. It's a difficult time, but let's not forget we came into this last 4 years in a very strong financial position in our state. and you manage money well in good times to help deploy support for people in difficult times. It's not, the New South Wales budget is not an end to itself. It's there to help families and people right across New South Wales get through. That's my focus, and a good budget helps household budgets. And ultimately that's the point. I know that strong financial management in this state, as a former treasurer, the whole focus has been, when we hit those disasters, that's not the time to stand back, it's the time to actually help people. We've done that every single time through drought, bushfires, floods, pandemic and floods again, and we will do the same thing as we move through this difficult time. I don't want to see any person across our state left behind because of these tragic events.
You do look at that too, sure, but are there going to be more severe measures in coming budgets in the next couple of years, and you must have done some sort of forward projections on the amount of money that's going on forward?
Yeah, but we're deploying money where it's needed. You know, we hold back where it's not. And if you look at the programs in place in the most recent budget, substantial reforms in areas where we believe we can make a difference, and that's in childcare and early childhood education, in housing affordability. But in terms of the main focus of the last 4 years, it has been and will continue to be helping communities affected by natural disasters. But we can't keep doing things the same way. That's why we've talked about and committed to raising the water down the down wall. Every time we end up in these situations, it is the role of governments, state and federal, to come in and provide support. But we're doing the wrong thing if we don't change the approach and expect a different result. It's not going to happen. No, the role of the budget, and we're in a strong financial position in this state, the role of our budget is to help our people, and that's what we'll continue to do through every event that comes our way. That's the role, that ultimately is the role of government. And it's not my money, it's the people of New South Wales money. And my job is to make sure every single person does not fall behind and gets the support they need to get through.
And I want to ask you about the pending retirement of David Elliott. Why is it coming to this?
Well, the first point I make is my focus is completely on flood-affected communities and getting every single person through. Now, I spoke to David late last night, who advised me of his decision. David has been a very strong minister in the government. He's made his statements very clear in relation to that.
And yet he's been replaced by a deputy.
Well, we've seen over the course of the last week retirements from the Labor Party, retirements from our side. That's only a natural part of politics. As David quite clearly, and I thought he spoke well this morning when he said, you don't want to have people who have now 30-year political careers. I think that's a positive thing, that you have new blood coming through who can make a contribution. And ultimately, over time, as you come to an election, there'll be new people coming through, there'll be retirements. That's part of the ordinary course of politics. But David has been a very strong minister in the government. He's a personal friend of mine. I encouraged him last night to stay.
So why is your brother pushing him out the door for somebody who's never been in politics before?
Well, that's not true. And as I've said to David, whatever support I can provide him, I will. David has made his decision, and I respect that decision. But he's served the people of New South Wales incredibly well. But ultimately, members of Parliament serve for some time. They serve their community with distinction, and it's been a difficult time for many people across our state. The members of Parliament on both sides have worked tirelessly through this period of time, and ultimately people make their decisions. I encourage David to stay. Ultimately, that's a matter for him. But our focus here today is ensuring that every single community across our state. I mean, our job.
Support where it counts, where you basically say this man deserves reselection.
Well, these are matters, and I have. And I've said very clearly, Dave, whatever support I can provide him, I will. Ultimately, these are matters for the Liberal Party. We've seen our organisation, one of the great aspects of our organisation is allowing our party members to make their decisions. Now, I've said to David that I believe he should stay. I've encouraged him to do so. The political processes get worked through. We have these challenges in the past. No party is immune from it. Labor Party, Liberal Party, these things happen. But ultimately, I think David should stay. I think he's been a very strong minister in the government.
Just on
the amount of saying Liberals leaving, should be concerns as the case of MPs leaving.
No, not at all. I mean, we see this at every election. Members of Parliament retire. I think that's a healthy thing. I think it's important that new blood comes through. I also think it's a positive thing that we've moved away from the past, where if you look at the parliaments of 20 years ago, people stayed there until they were 60, 70, 80 years of age. I don't think that's in the best interests of a strong, robust democracy. I think it's good for renewal, and I think what you're certainly seeing in modern politics today, people coming in, making a contribution, and then going on and doing other things. And I think that's something that we should actually welcome and cherish, because you bring new energy into a team. If you don't bring new energy in, then you don't renew, and governments become stale, and I don't think that's positive.
Would you only see nine civilians of your team resigning, and does that mean you'll have a reshuffling now?
Well, I'll consider those matters in due course. What's appropriate today is that we are here, we have an extreme weather event right across our state. We have people whose personal property and lives are in danger. The people around me here today are focused on one thing, and that is the people of our state and getting every single community through this difficult time. That is my focus.
How do you expect the public to, and probably showed in your response to Scott Morrison, that they don't feel Conservative governments are backing them when they're in natural disasters like the bushfires? They don't feel that there was enough support in the last round of floods from the government. So have you learned your lesson from that?
We've worked tirelessly through every single natural disaster here in New South Wales that has come our way over the last 4 years. We stood side by farmers during a 1 in 100 year drought that was devastating. Well, I've worked very closely and spent with the Emergency Services Minister and our team a lot of time in Lismore. We spent a lot of time in the Northern Rivers. It's been a significant focus of my premiership. It has been the number one priority to get every single person in the Northern Rivers through this difficult time. We have given significant financial support. We have been on the ground, rebuilding, working very closely with those communities. That was a freak weather event that we saw in the Northern Rivers. And we put time every single day focused on helping that community right across the Northern Rivers through it. And I'm not going to accept the premise in that question at all. We have stood, we have, and in natural, I'll say that every single day that I've been in this job, as Premier and previously as Treasurer, we have worked tirelessly to help our people through natural disasters. And I've been on the ground there a lot. And I'll continue. When natural disasters and tragedies occur, it is a difficult time for so many people. And our role as a government is to be there and help everybody through. And that's exactly what we've done. There's a long journey ahead, particularly in the Northern Rivers. There's a long journey ahead. We'll be announcing very shortly support for homes to make sure we rebuild Lismore in a more resilient way. But this government, my government, particularly during the floods, has worked tirelessly alongside those communities, many of whom have lost absolutely everything, to get people into homes, to support people with the mental health challenges that have come their way, to get people back into work, and ultimately to rebuild the Northern Rivers in a resilient way. There are always challenges, there are always mistakes, but my commitment through this entire time has been to stand side by side with those communities. I have done that, the Emergency Services Minister has done that, and the entire team has been there, continuing to work through, and it's a long journey, and we'll be there every step of the way.
If it was certain people in New South Wales better, a minister with hard portfolios under his belt and an 11-year parliamentary career, or a deputy who happens to be ideologically on the factor?
David Elliott.